The source material discusses a recent wave of WhatsApp blocks affecting Israelis, framing it not as a technical glitch, but as a potentially intentional, targeted action with severe national security implications. So a key theme running through this material seems to be the sudden, jarring realization that a nation's digital lifeblood is entirely dependent on the opaque internal mechanisms of a private entity.
Yeah, it really is a highly engaging piece of writing, and the author successfully identifies a massive societal vulnerability right off the bat.
Absolutely.
But, our depth of feedback today is going to bypass the minor stylistic choices and focus entirely on tightening the logical progression of these claims and, structuring the urgency to maximize the piece's editorial impact.
Right. Let's get right into it. So let's look at how the material sets up the core cause of this digital blackout.
Okay.
As the author lays it out, the argument is that the block is likely the work of a rogue, high-level meta employee, like someone acting on political biases to ruin the weekend for Israelis.
Rather than a technical error, yeah?
Exactly. Now, I understand the instinct to call foul play, but, is there a risk that demanding hard proof for an unfolding cyber event might paralyze the analysis? It feels a bit like waiting for a signed fire marshal's report before yelling fire in a crowded theater.
That is a fair point, but, the assertion that the WhatsApp blocks were a deliberate act by a rogue Meta employee requires a stronger foundation of evidence to prevent the argument from slipping into unsupported conjecture.
So you think it just goes too far, too fast?
Yeah, the weakness is really in the sequencing. The material jumps directly to the conclusion that a Meta employee with anti-Israel sentiments caused the block, and it just, dismisses a technical glitch outright.
Right.
By presenting a highly speculative theory as the primary driving force. Without adequate substantiation, the material risks alienating analytical listeners.
Because they naturally require proof before accepting such a serious accusation.
Exactly. You lose their trust right at the front door. So the suggestion here is to ground the speculation by anchoring the argument more heavily on the external validations mentioned briefly in the text, rather than relying solely on the speaker's internal assumptions.
Okay, so how do they actually do that on the page?
For concrete examples, instead of just throwing out the theory of a rogue executive, structurally prioritize the mention of the Israeli Internet Association.
Oh, right. The text does bring them up later on.
Yes. The material notes that this association believes the act was intentional. Lead with this institutional finding to establish credibility.
Makes sense.
Make it clear that this isn't just one person's theory, but a concern validated by an official internet body, which, provides a much stronger foundation for the subsequent discussion about Meta's overarching policies versus individual rogue actors.
Yeah, that completely changes the genre from an opinion piece to a grounded investigation. And, if we successfully establish that this isn't a glitch but a deliberate act, the conversation naturally shifts from the cause to the impact. Let's look closely at the section discussing the national security implications.
I completely agree. Let's look at the impact.
So the material outlines this argument regarding impact, saying that 99% of the population uses WhatsApp.
Which is just a massive number.
It is. And they argue that losing it, especially during an escalation with Iran, means losing basic communication and, critically, losing one's contact lists.
Right, and here is where we need to pivot. The reliance of a national population on a single commercial application exposes a systemic vulnerability that deserves a more robust strategic framing.
So the current framing isn't quite working for you.
Not for the scale of the threat, no. The weakness here is that the material correctly identifies the danger of a communications blackout, but it frames the consequences primarily around personal inconvenience.
Like losing individual addresses or not being able to call a specific person.
Yeah. This micro-level focus diminishes the gravity of the macro-level threat, which is a nation tying its emergency resilience to a foreign, private company's cloud infrastructure.
I see. It is like worrying about not being able to water your plants when the city's entire water main just exploded.
That is exactly it. So the suggestion is to elevate the discussion from the loss of personal contacts to a broader dialogue about national strategic dependency and the necessity of infrastructural redundancy.
Okay, what does that look like in practice?
Well, for concrete examples, emphasize the defense establishment's role mentioned in the text. When discussing the loss of contact lists, reframe it as the severing of the civilian societal fabric during a crisis.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that sounds infinitely more urgent.
Right. And highlight the specific alternatives being explored by the defense sector, such as reverting to traditional SMS or utilizing Telegram.
But present them not just as backup apps on your phone.
Exactly. Frame them as vital matters of national security and sovereign communication independence.
I can see what you're going for here. Let's see how we can strengthen. But realistically, can we expect the public to proactively adopt fallback networks, like SMS or Telegram? Or does human nature dictate they will only shift during an actual crisis?
While you are touching on a very real issue there, human nature is inherent reactive. We wait until things break.
Right. People are going to take the path of least resistance.
Absolutely. And that psychological reality leads perfectly into how the material structures its advice to the audience.
Okay, so let's analyze how the material currently handles its solutions, because right now it summarizes the mitigation strategies by just scattering them throughout the source.
Yes, it really bounces around.
Like there is advice about backing up chats to the cloud, then recognizing the Ministry of Communications' responsibility to talk to Meta executives, and then using older methods like SMS messages.
Yeah, and the urgent tone regarding a potential wartime communications blackout must be balanced with highly structured, prioritized guidance to empower rather than paralyze the audience.
So the scattered approach is actively hurting the reader's ability to process it.
Definitely. The weakness is that the material generates a high level of anxiety by warning of lost communication during an Iranian attack, but it scatters its practical advice organically throughout the conversation.
Which just creates a kind of cognitive overload.
Exactly. This dilutes the actionable takeaways, leaving the listener feeling alarmed, but lacking a clear, immediate plan of action.
So they just freeze.
Right, they panic. So the suggestion is to consolidate the scattered mitigation strategies into a stark, prioritized action plan.
Put it all in one clear place.
Yes, clearly separating immediate citizen responsibilities from long-term state responsibilities.
How would you map that out?
As a concrete example, create a distinct, two-pronged summary for the audience at the end. Prong 1 is citizen actions.
Okay.
Explicitly instruct the audience to back up their data to the cloud immediately, to save contacts, and to download Telegram or set up SMS groups before an emergency.
Give them things they can do right this second.
Exactly. And prong 2 is state actions. Clearly define that it is the Ministry of Communications' job to handle Meta and the defense establishment's job to build alternative networks.
I love that. This division really transforms panic into organized preparation.
It really does.
But wait, what if softening the alarmist tone by making it too organized actually reduces the urgency needed to get people to back up their data? Is there a risk that focusing solely on a neat checklist might overlook the motivational power of fear?
That's fascinating. What are the potential limitations or counter-arguments to that idea? Because, well, fear definitely wakes the reader up.
Right.
But fear without a clear, immediate pathway for resolution doesn't lead to action. It just leads to anxiety.
That makes total sense.
By structuring the advice cleanly, you aren't softening the threat. You're just providing a usable blueprint for survival. Clarity ultimately wins over panic.
That is a great way to put it. Well, let's quickly recap what we've covered today for the author. The material is a highly compelling look at a massive vulnerability, but it can be strengthened, first, by validating its speculative claims through the Israeli Internet Association.
Get that credibility up front.
Exactly. Second, elevating the loss of WhatsApp from a personal inconvenience to a national strategic dependency.
Raise those stakes.
And finally, organizing the solutions into clear citizen versus state actions. To the author, we highly recommend implementing these structural changes to the piece.
It will make a world of difference.
It really will. Thank you so much for submitting this highly engaging material, and we warmly invite you to submit your revised work or any future projects back in for another critique.